The Hunter Valley is one of my favourite places in New South Wales. It also has among the best coal in the world, and coal mining has been a huge part of the Hunters' history, as has been the Labor Party. Indeed, the seat of Hunter has been a Labor stronghold since 1910. Joel Fitzgibbon is the member for the Hunter, a former Defence Minister and Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry in the Rudd governments. He is now the Shadow Minister for Resources. I spoke to him earlier. You've been a bit of a diamond in the rough in Parliament yourself, so you have held many different portfolios. But the key thing here is you've written a terrific article in the Daily Telegraph yesterday. You spoke out recently after the federal election, which obviously Labor lost, saying Labor needs to rethink its policies on coal. Your article yesterday in the Daily Telegraph had a terrific insight, which was that if we really care about getting global emissions down, there's nothing or as good as Newcastle or Hunter Valley coal. Explain your theory to us.
Well, a few points there, Rowan. First of all, yes, Labor is a political party which grew out of the struggles of the working class. We've traditionally backed blue-collar workers, and we need to continue to do so. And coal will remain a very, very important part of our economy for a long, long time to come. In the Hunter region alone, it's responsible for around or up to 75,000 jobs, both directly and indirectly. If you go to townships in my electorate, like Muswellbrook and Singleton, it's not just the miners, it's everyone from the manufacturing plant nearby, repairing and building mining equipment, right through to the pub and the local sandwich shop. Without the mining industry, they would not exist. So it is important, and we can take meaningful action on climate change. We can meet our obligations under the Paris Agreement without forsaking jobs in the mining industry. But what's really got me concerned, which from my perspective was at the centre of the article you referred to, is this emerging culture conflict being played out in our communities, where people typically found in the inner suburbs of our capital cities, typically not worried about where their next mortgage is coming from, reflecting very badly on people who don't quite agree with them on the best path to a cleaner economy, and who want to, worse, demonise those who don't sign up to their prescription of the problem. In other words, they're demonising coal miners and people associated with the coal mining. I mean, to the extent where they're blaming them for recent bushfires and this terrible protracted drought. Now, that's unfair, it's ill-considered, it's in fact ill-informed, and it has to stop, and I'm determined to back my local blue-collar workers, not just local, but blue-collar workers right throughout the country.
You make a really good point, Joel, that everyone's blaming, or many people on the left, the Greens, etc., are blaming even the New South Wales so-called Liberal, Matt Keane, and even former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, somehow drawing connections between bushfires and climate change. You've made the point that regardless of our differences or what we believe on the theory of climate change, you've made the very, very sound point that regardless of what policies we would or would not have adopted over the last 20 years, these bushfires would still have occurred. Whether we'd had carbon taxes or emission trading schemes or anything else, these bushfires would still have occurred, and they still would have been just as disastrous and just as important to get on top of, but demonising coal is not what it's about. Now, to this idea, explain to me, Joel, the quality of Hunter coal and why it is superior to what is being burnt currently in places like China and India.
Well, it's not just Hunter coal, it's also true of central Queensland coal. The coal burns more efficiently. You get more energy per tonne of coal burned than you would from coal from elsewhere. And of course it's less polluting as a result. So we do have high quality coal, and both on the thermal coal front and the metallurgical coal front, when we export that coal to other countries striving to reduce their own emissions, we lend assistance. Now, if China is going to become a cleaner economy, if India is going to become a cleaner economy, it'll need lots of thermal coal to produce the energy needed and lots of metallurgical coal to make the steel needed to build those wind turbines, to build those solar panels, and to bring their emissions down. So by continuing to export to them, we're actually making a contribution in lowering the emissions of the big emitters. I mean, China is responsible for almost 30% of global emissions, Australia 1.3. So it is true that, we could have abolished all of our emissions, got rid of all of our emissions 10 years ago, and sadly we'd still be having the bushfires and the drought we are experiencing now, because it's obvious that that would not, at 1.3%, that wouldn't be sufficient to make a difference. But if we can assist the big emitters, China, India, and even the United States, not that they need our assistance, but when we get the big emitters reducing their emissions, then that will really make a difference. And to those who still aren't convinced and carbon output makes a contribution, I just appeal to them to sign up to the precautionary principle. If in doubt, do something about it, because in 10, 20 and 30 years' time, it may be too late. So let's act on climate change, I say, but let's do it in a sensible way and in a way that doesn't unnecessarily destroy jobs here in Australia.
And you make the point, it's actually purely symbolic if all Australia does. The big argument for Australia on climate change is obviously we must do things in order to be able to lecture the rest of the world and say to the rest of the world, well, you guys have got to bring down your emissions, look what we're doing here. That's a symbolic gesture. You're talking about a very practical gesture, which is mathematically, logically, scientifically, the more Australian coal is exported to countries like China and India and many, many others, Vietnam, Indonesia and so on, the more we will bring down global emissions. So we will actually help the world meet its targets by exporting Australian coal. That's counterintuitive to everything we hear from the Greens and many on the Labor Party and Liberal Party.
And Rowan, it's finally becoming a well-known fact, because a few of us have been repeating it often of late. It takes 200 tonnes of metallurgical coal to produce one wind turbine. So how's China going to clean up its economy if it can't receive clean, relatively efficient coal from Australia? And, we're making money selling it. So this makes a lot of sense. But just on the former point you made, it's not just symbolic. It's hard for us to poke China, India, or even the US in the chest and say you're not doing your bit on the carbon reduction front if we in Australia aren't doing something ourselves. So it's more than symbolic. We need to act and show leadership. We are a wealthy nation, well placed to do it. Our economy is in transition in this sense in any case. You see solar panels writ large on the roofs of our houses, big solar farms, wind farms being built. We are in this transition already, but I think government policy can help get us there more quickly. And of course, putting carbon aside for a moment, a clean economy is a good economy, and there are big opportunities for us in renewables, given we've got an abundance of solar and wind resources, great opportunities therefore to lead on hydrogen. So let's make the transition, but let us not forsake coal and other fossil fuel jobs on the way, and certainly let us not be condemning of coal miners for going out there earning a living to pay the mortgage. And can I say, Rowan, all these keyboard warriors who have been attacking me on Twitter and elsewhere are doing so at home with a shardy out of the fridge run by coal power, under the lights run by coal power in a large sense. And of course, the computer itself, Rowan, is made from a range of minerals, metals that we mine here in Australia. So let's have some common sense in this debate.
Joel Fitzgibbon, an absolute breath of fresh air from the Labor side of politics. I think you could teach some of our Liberals a few lessons there as well. Thanks so much for coming on, Outsiders, and well done on going up and seeing the Fireys up there and the Hunter. And I hope the electorate is in. I think it's in good hands there, but I hope it's in good health as well in the coming months through the drought. Thank you, Joel Fitzgibbon.
Merry Christmas.